Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchami, Dhammāṃ saranang gacchami, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchami. So, hello everybody, and welcome to our meditation class. Let me think of wardrobe issues here, just a moment. Something isn't right. Okay, so there's a free lesson in putting on a robe here. In addition to the Dhamma talk. There we are. So today had a kind of a nice experience. I was walking along on Pindapat, and there's this lady who I see there sometimes. She's a kind of older lady. I think she speaks very little English, but we always kind of wave at each other. And I always pass by this kind of park, and she always stops there to do like exercise. I don't know how old she is, but she's in pretty good shape. She walks, I think she walks a good distance. Actually, as an aside, there's one guy who lives close by, and I think he walks, it's gotta be, maybe 4 or 5 kilometers, and I think he might be in his 80s or something like that. So I see him in the morning. But I saw this lady in the morning today, and usually we just wave, but today I waved at her. She was in the distance where she usually does exercises, and she looked really happy. She's like, oh, all right. And then she had something like in a bag, and she kind of motioned me to come over. And she doesn't speak any English, so then I went over there to see her, and she gave me this kind of like Tibetan necklace, and she had this note, and the note said, hello, dear friend, my son got this necklace from a Buddhist Tibet. He stopped at a Tibetan Buddhist monastery, and she said, I'm going to China next week, and I thought it'd be good for you. So she said, may peace and joy always be with you, So she was really happy, give it away. And I think she's, going back to China, and I don't know, she maybe just was there visiting her son for a few months. And so I kind of continued on my way, and was like, oh, that was a really kind of nice gesture of her. Because we usually just kind of say hello, walking past. And, interestingly enough as well, earlier this week was actually at a kind of, we might call this kind of ceremony that they do when somebody passes away. Somebody passes away, usually almost like immediately afterwards, it seems, they have a monk come over and give a talk at night. And then I think the following day, maybe they have like a dana. And then after 7 more days, they have a dana. And after 3 months, they have a dana. And after 1 year, after that, they have a dana. So the monk who usually gives talks is away somewhere else. So these people invited me. And they asked me to say a little bit about this kind of ceremony, which is kind of the purpose of that ceremony is to transfer what they call merits to our departed relatives. And so there's kind of this view that in Buddhism, there's this kind of view, I don't know what you call it, but there's more than one place you can be born, not just in the places we can see. You can also be born in places we can't see. And one of those places is this kind of realm of hungry ghosts. Some of them are in better shape than others, but if you get born there, then you're just totally dependent on other beings. So there was one monk who had he was a founder of the Thai foresters. They've got a biography about him, and in the biography, he would say, the hungry ghosts are like almost the roughest. There's beings in rougher shape than them, but they're in pretty rough shape because they're just totally dependent on what their relatives give them. And he said some of them, they like went to hell for a long period of time, like hundreds of thousands of years, and they came back. And they wanted their relatives to make merit for them. If they asked him and he knew where the relatives were, he would go and ask the relatives, okay, make merit for your departed relative they want. But he said when he asked them, where are your relatives, they just described this completely incomprehensible world, something that's just, they couldn't comprehend. It's kind of something really strange because they'd been gone for so long. And I guess the world was a really different place when they were here. And then there were other ones who maybe died just recently and were not reborn in some other state, just came right to Hungry Ghost. And so he could find their relatives and offer things to them. But in any event, the Buddha always kind of recommended this because we never know when our relatives, where they've gone. So to perform a kind of action like this and make sure, in case they've been in that place, they have something that they need. And so basically what underlies all of this is this kind of a concept of generosity. It kind of underlies this lady giving me kind of a Tibetan necklace. It kind of underlies the reason, or one of the reasons, kind of the quality that underlies this kind of ceremony of transferring merits to the deceased is this kind of generosity, this kind of attitude of wanting to give something to somebody, wanting to give somebody a gift. And I remember when I was, when I was first getting into Buddhism, and I used to work at this kind of like metal shop. And I was kind of in this metal shop, kind of like, bending wire, different things. And there was this kind of a book by Bhikkhu Bodhi that came out, and it had this kind of section on the Buddha's teachings for lay people. It was kind of interesting. He has the Buddha actually talks about dealing with money and, how one should save one's money, how one should use one's money. That's maybe topics for another talk. But one of the things that was emphasized in there was, the importance of this quality of generosity. The Buddha says, bhikkhus, even if people knew the results of giving and sharing, as I know the results of giving and sharing, they wouldn't let the stain of stinginess obsess their mind. Even if it was their last bite of food, their last morsel, they wouldn't eat it if there was somebody to share it with. If they knew the results of this giving and sharing, they knew the results of this generosity. And so interestingly enough, I had this kind of, in that same kind of booklet, it had this thing about the ways that a person gives a gift to make that gift the most beneficial for them and for the other person, I guess. It's not, it's a two-way street. But one of them was, first of all, this interesting, one gives a gift out of faith. In other words, one gives a gift with the idea that the Buddha was who he said he was, and kind of was somebody who found a way to a happiness that was deathless, a happiness that didn't die. This one gives a gift out of faith. Another one, it's interesting, one gives a gift respectfully. And so when you give a gift, one person gives a gift, you often see in kind of Sri Lanka, Thailand, they always give gifts with two hands. It's kind of like, it's not like, here you go, behind the back, take this gift. It's always kind of like they come up and give the gift. And if it's to a monk, they'll bow, various things, to give the gift with an attitude of respect. The third one was one that I found most interesting, which was giving a gift at the right time. In other words, there's all kinds of different times you can give a gift to somebody. Okay, I've got this kind of nice present for you, but you're, right about to rush out the door on your way to work. Here you go. That's not the right time. Kind of the right time is when they're able to receive the gift with kind of, with full attention. Another one is that they give the gift kind of with a generous heart. In other words, it's not like, oh man, I gave this away. I wish I hadn't have given this away. I kind of could have eaten that myself, or put it in the fridge. I could have had that burger. Instead, I gave it away. And then the last one is actually very interesting too. The last one is they give a gift without denigrating themselves, and they give a gift without denigrating other people. In other words, there's ways that we can give gifts which are insulting to ourselves. This is a kind of interesting concept in the West, because the West originally, there's many wonderful things about, this is just a kind of perspective on the attitudes of gift giving in the West, but gift giving in the West kind of before influenced, obviously, religious traditions, and religious tradition in the West was Christianity, the main one, at least when I was growing up. And Christianity has a couple different ideas. One is, if you give with the right hand, don't let the left hand know what you're doing. In other words, don't tell anybody. Be really quiet about that. Another one was that, in the example of Jesus' life, he hurts himself to give gifts to other people. He kills him, he gets himself killed to save everybody else. And so there's this attitude that when you give, you should hurt, if you give to the point where you hurt yourself, is good. So this kind of attitude can go underground, even for people who aren't Christians, and they give gifts that actually insult themselves. So it's interesting, the Buddha gives a kind of flip series that happens for each of these qualities of giving. First one is when a person, I can't remember them all, but when a person gives a gift out of faith, I think he says like wherever he's born, he uses the he, wherever he's born, he's, handsome and, graceful, possesses like extreme beauty of complexion, wherever that result ripens, A person gives a gift respectfully, then when they give that gift respectfully, where the results of that karma ripen, then people are respectful towards them. People give them respect. It says they're, I guess, you can flip it. Wives or husbands, like people pay attention to them. They think that they should be listened to, these kind of various things. The third one was when a person gives a gift at the right time, then things come to a person at the right time and in abundant measure. And the fourth one was that when a person gives a gift, what was the fourth one again? It's going to be respectfully, attentively, out of faith. What did I say? I can't remember. Not the best at lists. What was it? Right time, I got that. Respectfully, out of faith. Okay, I'll skip to the last one and see if I remember the fourth one. But going through. The last one was when a person gives a gift without denigrating themselves or others, then they don't experience any loss of their wealth. Their loss of the gains that they get don't go anywhere. So the interesting thing about all these things, they have their opposite. When a person gives a gift disrespectfully, disrespect comes to them. When they give the gift kind of insulting themselves, insulting other people, those kind of insults, one loses one's wealth as a result of that. One gives a gift not at the right time, benefits come to a person not at the right time. One gift, it's going to bug. What was it? That's right, generously. Yeah, that's right. Phil got it. You can write these on the back of your hand. You can kind of check them out. But when you give a gift kind of with a generous heart, then, results come to you in kind of abundant measure. So it's interesting, there's this kind of a story, there's different stories about kind of each of these kind of qualities of gift giving. And kind of when a person, there's one story in the canon where a person, he's very rich, he was a money lender. And, the king is carting, after he dies, the king carts off all his money. It's kind of like, those carts and carts of gold and silver and all these various things. And the king comes to the Buddha, he says, it's amazing, this man had all this money, cartloads and cartloads of money, but his clothes were like this. They were kind of, hempen rags, very terrible to look at. His vehicle was like this. It was like a dilapidated cart. In other words, he was really rich, but couldn't enjoy the results of giving. And it turned out that in a previous life, he'd given alms to a Buddha, a Pacceka Buddha, but then regretted giving those alms. So and similarly with all these other various types of giving, all these other various types of things. Actually, I remember there was one monk who, I think I've told this story to a couple people here. Maybe you heard it a while ago. Don't tell it all the time. But when I met him, he was kind of this really interesting monk because people always wanted to give him things. And you could never really figure out why. Kind of people are just always giving things to him. So he came to the monastery. By the way, it's sometimes very difficult for Thai monks to travel outside of Thailand. He went to you have to go through like 3 or 4 kind of commissioners, like these monks who are above you in the administrative hierarchy. And so he went to the first one and kind of asked, can I go? And I think they usually want bribes. And so he didn't have any money. So he got to the second one, and already the letter had arrived when he got there saying, deny this monk a visa. But anyway, somehow he got it, and he ended up going over to England. And when he was in England, he was just visiting a kind of monastery in the Ajahn Chah tradition, which is how I kind of ended up meeting him, not in England. And he was an amazing sewer. So he ended up kind of doing some sewing in their kind of monastery, and they invited him to stay for a kind of for a longer period of time. And then eventually, I'm not sure how he got the ticket, but he ended up coming over to Canada. Oh no, our senior monk at the time, he went over to England and he invited him to Canada. And wherever he went, people were always taking him all over the place, like much more than any other monk. And it wasn't because he was like, just you wanted to, like I wanted to give things to him too. So there's one kind of really interesting story. One time he went to Thailand to visit some people, and there was a katina in the United States. Somehow he'd actually ended up flying to the United States. The Thai ambassador invited him to fly to this monastery in the United States. And so he met some Thai people there. He flew over to Thailand. And when they were having this katina, they invited him to fly over from Thailand to the States for 2 weeks. So then he flew over to the States and he flew back to Thailand. Then he flew to Canada. It's kind of just, he was just always, getting these invitations to go everywhere. And then as it turned out, when I got to talking to him a little bit later, it turned out he had this kind of very interesting past history, where when he was a layman, he was a sewer, like a tailor. And whenever monks would come with their kind of tudong gear, like their umbrellas and all these various things, he would start sewing them up. He'd sew up their umbrellas. And then he started doing these things where he'd rent a bus, like a really big bus. And I think they probably have this in they have it in India, and I think they have probably almost certain in Sri Lanka. They have it in Thailand, where there's these very kind of revered holy spots, kind of various pilgrimage sites. And he would just rent this bus and drive people around for free to these various kind of pilgrimage sites. And he kept doing this for so long, and eventually he ordained. And then when he ordained, people wanted to give him things all the time. It's kind of very funny, a fascinating thing, So you can try this out yourself. Actually, if you get really interested, try to continually give gifts with one of these qualities in mind and see what happens. Actually, there was one time after I read this sutta, I got really interested in giving gifts to people at the right time. So I became really obsessed with that. I want to keep giving gifts. I want to give them at the exact right time. And, I won't say anything more about that, but, you can do your own experiences, and test it out, see what happens. So, a couple classes ago, I think we were kind of talking about these kind of very interesting aspects of kamma. There's these aspects of kamma which are straightforward. Roll the ball down the hill, it goes down the hill with X trajectory and then keeps going. But there are also these aspects of kamma that are kind of very mysterious, where things come together in ways that are really unexplained. Like the Thai ambassador invites you to fly to the States, to Washington, to visit him. And then, you end up going to, this monastery in Boston, then somebody invites you maybe to a monastery I've lived here my whole life. I think he went to more monasteries and more places in North America than I've been to. And then you fly to Thailand, somebody invites you back, All these kind of things are very mysterious, the way that they ripen, and nobody can kind of predict them, But this is kind of one of the interesting aspects of kamma, that these things come up in ways that one can't predict. So I think actually in kind of this quantum mechanics, like this quantum physics now, I'm not up on the latest things, but I remember when I read a book a long time ago, they had this thing about quantum entanglement. It's kind of, you get these two particles, and they kind of hang out together or whatever, they do something together. And then even when these particles are separated in vastly different areas of space, they're kind of connected. So I can't remember, it's almost like if one makes a turn at one time, the other one turns exact same time. They call it quantum entanglement, So in other words, these particles get entangled with each other through their interactions. And these particles are almost kind of connected to thought. Because, you look for one to see if it's a wave. If you're looking for a wave, you find a wave. If you're looking for a particle, you find a particle. That was the interesting thing about this quantum mechanics. It's kind of whatever you look for, whatever you try to measure, it just becomes that. So in other words, there's an element even in physics where our thoughts, our intentions have an effect on the world. Our thoughts, our intentions have this quality of entangling particles together. So on the larger scale, what you might call Buddhist quantum physics, there's this kind of quantum entanglement that one gets when one gives. It's kind of quantum entanglement that one gets when one gives with these various intentions. Because these are the kind of things that people desire in the world, right? And people desire respect. People desire, to have things come to them at the right time. People desire beauty. People desire to have wealth. They desire all these kind of things. It's not like these are necessarily evil things. There's a kind of interesting thing as well about kind of the Buddha's teachings that often, I come here, I'll often talk about kind of renunciation and all these various things, but the Buddha actually taught a lot about the world as well. Taught a lot about the ways that gains come to people in the world. And the interesting thing is, the ways that gains come, the ways that things come to people who desire them, is often through basically doing good, through doing these good actions. It's like somebody who kind of works and saves up their wages. You work a bit, save up your wages, get some money in the bank. And when you get that money in the bank, you kind of spend it on what you want. You can spend it on, a kind of a car, spend it on a house, you can spend it on a vacation. If you go on the really big vacation, you can't get the car, whatever it might be. And in the same way, when a person who has what they call merit, a person who collects what they call these good and wholesome qualities, when they direct their mind towards certain things, those things sometimes just come together for that person. So in other words, what this means is when we give gifts, when we accumulate this merit, when we do these acts of generosity, we're building up a potential in our mind. We're entangling ourselves with this kind of potential to direct our mind, to direct our future in particular ways. So because this is a kind of investment, it means there's all kinds of ways that we can spend it. Yeah? All kinds of ways that we can spend the goodness that we accumulate. If a person wants something, like, okay, I really want to, get a car, and they keep building up their merit, eventually can get that car. There was this kind of interesting story about this one fellow who visited this Korean Zen master in the United States. He was a very famous Zen master, and his name was Sung San. And I think he just lost his job, and he'd lost his girlfriend. And he came to Zen master Sung San, and he said, I want a new job, I want a new girlfriend. And he's like trying to teach him, okay, I'll teach you how to meditate. You don't need, you're trying to teach him maybe about like impermanence, these various things. But he was just totally obsessed with getting a new job and like getting a new girlfriend. So he said, okay, go and chant X, Y, and Z 100,000 times, do like 100,000 prostrations, and you'll have a new job and a new girlfriend. And so he went and did, and he got a new job and a new girlfriend as a result of doing these kind of things. This is one way you can spend this kind of merit. But the interesting thing about this kind of spending of merit is it's like somebody who earns a lot of money and then spends that money on a vacation. Okay, I got this money saved up. Let's go on a vacation. You go on the vacation, it's fun while the vacation lasts, but then a person doesn't have that money anymore. But then there's another type of person who will accumulate money, and then they'll, spend some of it maybe, but other portions of it they'll invest. And they'll put it away so that that money actually grows, so they can spend it on better things. And in the same way, when a person undertakes this act of giving, makes themselves generous, makes themselves open-hearted, empty-handed, I think they call it open-handed in the canon, willingly giving all the time. There's various things that a person can direct their mind to. So when a person comes to the meditation class, we always, people who teach meditation always try to teach them, don't direct your mind so much towards the vacation. Right? When you want to go on the vacation, you can, it's not like it's, evil to go on the vacation, but it's limited. That's why people come to meditation, practice giving, practice generosity, just for the sake of a worldly end, right? Like just for the sake, I'm stressed out, I want less stress. I just broke up with, somebody maybe, in this guy's example, I want a new girlfriend, I want a new job. The people who come to practice meditation for that, especially in the West, they come for that purpose, and eventually they get it. Eventually they achieve that purpose through their practice of meditation. So they spend their money. But then it goes away. Their money's gone. So there was this kind of one monk I knew, and we were kind of, when I was in Anagarika, we were both Anagarikas at the same time. And he kind of had, he was, I think, stressed out in life and had no real direction. And then he came to the monastery and ordained as an Anagarika. I think maybe he didn't really know what he wanted. He had a lot of impressive qualities. He was a very talented man. Kind of could do many different things. He was kind of very good. And he was kind of going through, and then towards the end, after he'd been a monk for about a year, he disrobed. Wanted to go back to the lay life, which in and of itself is not something evil. As a monk, you can come and go whenever you want. Not necessarily evil, but I was talking to him about it. And what he said, I think, all those things that I couldn't do before, now I can do them. Like all this kind of psychological issues I had, I think they are kind of now dampened down. I've kind of solved them. I think I can go back and do better. In other words, part of his intent was to take care of these problems, and he did. And so when he went back, then he didn't have the same problems, and he ended up getting a job. He ended up going to school. He didn't have a degree before that. He went and got his accounting degree, and I think now he's working for the Canadian government in Ottawa, which is a good job, right? Kind of working for, what do you call it, CRA? Canada Revenue Agency and the government. So he's got a good, steady, safe job, and he's taking care of his mother, which are kind of, both wholesome things. But he spent his money, right? Kind of saved up that money for 3 years, and he spent it. Right? And so towards the end, he said, I don't even know if I want Nibbana anymore. And I was kind of teasing him, because when I was young, they used to have this kind of this music video where they had this thing called the Venga bus. And this Venga bus was like a party bus where everybody were partying. And I was kind of joking with him. I was like, yeah, when you disrobe, the Venga bus is going to pull up. And he's like, I would get on that bus. He wanted to go party after that. And I think he did, But in any event, he spent his money. He didn't have the money left over to go further than that. And then after that money is spent, after the car gets old, after the house gets old, after the vacation is finished, that's it. It's no longer there. So what monks always advise, or what the Buddha advises is, especially for lay people when you go through these various things, is the things that you want, you can get by doing good actions. That's not the purpose of his teachings. But always, if you do that, that's all you get. So it's better to take this potential that one gains, this peace of mind that one gains, and invest it in a higher goal. Instead of investing it in external things, a little less stress, a better job, kind of new part, whatever it might be for whatever, then it's better to invest it back in one's own mind. Because this is like storing it away in a bank. A story is like somebody who takes their money, instead of spending it, puts it in a mutual fund where it generates interest. Right? That money they can take, the more money they put in there, it generates interest not only on what they put in, it generates interest on the interest. So it builds up over and over again. And in the same way, when one takes this potential that one has from one's practice and invests it in training one's mind, that potential builds. It builds on itself. It can build in on itself. So that the small amount of peace that one got from meditation, when one reinvests it, one gets the interest on that, plus the interest on the interest. So it builds and builds and builds, so long as one keeps reinvesting it. So this is the best place to stash away the good karma that we get from giving. Stash away the good karma that we get from meditation, to stash it away in our practice, and to stash it away with the goal, to what you might call purchase, spend it on the best thing we can, which is to try to actually find Nibbana, to try to attain the noble attainments. Because unlike the other things in the world where you spend it and it's done, the noble attainments are something that there's actually no correlation for in the physical world. Because once you get them, they never leave. That's it. It's permanent. So this is the highest thing that we can aim for in our accumulation of merit. From the practice of generosity, the practice of taking the precepts, the practice of meditation, when they all aim at this goal, then we're a person who invests our karma wisely. We're a person who doesn't spend it all on the vacation, spend it on the party, spend it on the Venga bus. We're a person who stashes it away. Stashes it away where it will generate more. Stashes it away so we can buy something, so we can spend it on something that's truly safe, that's truly worthwhile. And that is the noble attainments and Nibbana.